Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Startup Growth Playbook Live, session number 19, Pitch Mastery for Founders who hate pitching. I'm Bhuva Shakti, a global product operations and fundraising advisor, helping businesses build systems for growth that actually last. For more than 25 years, I've worked at the intersection of technology, finance, and operations, first on Wall Street, leading digital and AI powered transformations, and later in angel and venture capital ecosystems, helping founders launch products, expand markets, and attract investors. That blend of structure and innovation is what I now bring for startups and small businesses, helping you grow with clarity, scalability, and financial confidence. Beyond workshops like this, I also offer one to one coaching sessions customized around your priorities, whether that's product and customer readiness, operations and expansion readiness, or fundraising and investor readiness. We focus on one area and build a combined plan that meets your current and future needs. If you'd like to explore what that might look like for your business, I offer a free 20-minute consultation over Zoom. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Bhuva Shakti. You can also get unlimited access to all the sessions and full recordings by going to my membership website. The link is on the screen. You can sign up for your first month free and rewatch at getwalletmax.com/membership. Now, today's agenda. Let's start by acknowledging something everyone in this room already feels. Most founders do not enjoy pitching, not because they lack conviction, but because pitching often feels like a performance. High stakes, high pressure, and disconnected from the actual work of building a company. What we are doing today is shifting that mindset. Investors are trying to understand whether you're building something with real traction, real customers, and a real path forward. Pitching is essentially structured communication about your business. Once you see it that way, the stress level drops fast. The goal of this session is to help you deliver a pitch that is simple, credible, and rooted in the fundamentals of your company. We are going to walk through a framework you can use no matter what stage you are in: pre product, post revenue, still testing your go to market, or preparing for your next round. We'll talk about story, structure, traction, investor psychology, and delivery. And because this is a condensed session, I'll focus on the highest impact tools you can execute immediately after we end today. You'll walk away with clarity on what to say, what not to say, and how to get your pitch to do more heavy lifting for you. My goal is also to make this feel practical. Pitching is strategy. It's about showing investors that you understand the problem, that you are learning quickly, and that you have customers validating your assumptions. Whether you are pre revenue or raising a seed round, you'll see how a strong pitch can accelerate everything from partnerships to warm introductions. Let's look at reframing pitching from performance to clarity. Founders often think the best pitch is the most polished one. What actually works is the clearest one. Investors make decisions last sometimes within the first 60 to 90 seconds. They are looking for signals. Do you understand the customer, the problem, the traction you've earned, and the path you're walking toward revenue? When you approach pitching like you're communicating, everything sharpens. Investors want to understand your business model, not your presentation skills. They want to hear your viewpoint on the market, not rehearsed lines. When you drop the pressure to impress, your delivery becomes more authentic and, ironically, far more compelling. The pitch is not a test, it's a translation exercise. You're taking all the chaos of early stage building and packaging it into a narrative investors can follow. The moment founders understand this shift, everything becomes easier. Your pitch becomes a tool you use to lead conversations, not something you suffer through. It becomes a reflection of your operating rigor, your judgment, your ability to make business decisions with discipline And when you show up with that clarity, investors lean in because they finally see the real business behind the noise. Now let's explore the investor mindset, what they actually care about. Investors are evaluating your pitch for risk. Their brain is running a fast filter. Can this founder execute? Is the problem real? Is the market ready? And is there enough traction to build conviction? When you understand that lens, you stop trying to impress investors and start addressing the risks they are already scanning for. This is also why founder clarity is so important. If you seem confused, they assume your business is too. The number one thing investors care about is the team. Your background, your insight into the problem, your ability to learn quickly. That carries more weight than any feature list. Next is traction. Traction is proof. Proof reduces risk. Proof signals customers care. And early stage investors are essentially asking why you, why this, why now, and what have customers already told you. If you can speak to those things, you've already won half the pitch. They also care about market timing and execution. They are thinking through, is this the right window for this product? Is this founder showing discipline? And does the pitch reflect an actual operating plan or just enthusiasm? When you can speak to customer behavior, go to market clarity, and the learning loops you are running, investors see you as someone who is building deliberately, not guessing. A climate fintech founder once told me, investors say they like me, but they don't invest. When we unpacked that, it was clear the pitching was not the progress, but it was just the idea. Once they reframed the pitch to highlight pilot results, customer behavior patterns, and early revenue indicators, investors finally saw the traction story. And three of the same investors who previously passed came back in. Now, let's look at the 7-part pitch narrative framework. The simplest way to remove overwhelm from pitching is to use a structure. Not because investors demand it, but because it gives your brain a clean path to follow under pressure. The framework we are using today is 7 core elements that map to how investors listen. Number one, the hook, then the problem, your founder insight, the solution, traction, business model, and finally the ask. When you follow this sequence, you reduce cognitive load for the investor and increase your clarity. Each part has a purpose. The hook draws investors into the world of your customer. The problem shows you understand a pain point that matters economically. The insight proves you have a unique perspective. The solution introduces your product without drowning people in details. Traction shows credibility. Business model shows viability. And finally, the ask shows leadership. When these pieces line up, your pitch becomes a strategic story, not just a list of facts. And here's the real benefit. This structure grows with you. Whether you're raising pre-seed or Series A, the 7-part story stays the same. What changes is the depth of your traction and the maturity of your metrics. This is why founders who adopt this early tend to sound more prepared and more credible long before they even build their deck. Let's look at the opening hook, how to start strong. Your opening set the tone for the entire pitch. If the first 20 seconds are vague, overly technical, or too slow, it becomes much harder for investors to stay engaged. But if your opening creates clarity, especially around the customer and the problem, it gives investors a mental model to follow. The hook is about relevance. It's the moment where you say, here is the world my customer lives in, and here is the pain that demands a solution. The strongest hooks are grounded in specificity. They may use a single customer story, a sharp data point, or a relatable scenario that captures attention. They don't try to explain the entire business upfront. They simply anchor the investor to the right problem and context. Think of the hook as the frame of the painting. It shapes everything the investor perceives next. When the hook is crisp, the rest of the pitch gets easier because the investor is already on the right wavelength. What you want to avoid are generic openers like the market is huge or we are building an AI platform. Those statements tell investors nothing about who you serve or why now. Instead, open with something concrete and anchored in customer truth. Investors lean in when they feel the founder actually understands the pain point, not when they hear broad claims. Let's now look at defining the problem with precision. When you articulate the problem, think of it as the investor's entry point into your business. If this part is vague, everything else becomes shaky. Investors want to understand exactly who experiences the pain, how intense it is, and what it costs them in time, money, or risk. And when founders stay too high level, it signals they haven't spent enough time in the customer's world. Precision builds credibility. The more specific your articulation, the more investors believe you've done the work. The mistake many founders make is describing the problem from the company's perspective instead of customers. For example, saying startups struggle with invoicing is generic. But if you say startups lose 6 to 10 hours a week chasing payments across disconnected tools, that's really specific. The more grounded your problem is in real behaviors, real frustrations, and real inefficiencies, the stronger your pitch becomes. This is where your customer interviews, early pilot conversations, and field insights become invaluable. Investors want evidence that real people are already pulling you toward a solution. A crisp problem statement creates strategic focus. When the investor understands the problem clearly, your solution doesn't have to work hard to make sense. This is why your problem section must be tightly framed and free from jargon. Your job is to show that you know the customer so well that your solution feels inevitable, the natural answer to a pain that cannot be ignored. Now let's look at the founder insight. What's your competitive edge? Your founder insight is often the most underrated part of the pitch, yet it's one of the most powerful. This is the moment you show investors why you see something others don't. It's not about your resume, it's not about your lived experience. It's really about your unique pattern that you've recognized that led you to build this product. What is your domain knowledge? What is your industry expertise? Insight is what makes the investor say, now I see why this founder will win. An insight is different from an observation. An observation is customers struggle to track their expenses. But an insight is customers aren't struggling with tracking, they are struggling because the system forces them to think like accountants, not humans. Insight reframes the problem, it sharpens your narrative, it tells investors you have a differentiated understanding of your market. This is especially important at pre seed and seed, where traction is still developing. Your insight is often the signal that replaces missing data. When founders express their insight clearly and concisely, it strengthens their authority without needing extra slides or credentials. It becomes a story anchor that threads through your product, go to market plan, and revenue strategy. Investors want to know you have a unique angle, something that gives you an unfair advantage in understanding and solving the problem. That's what this unlocks. Now, the solution: clear, simple, and focused. Your solution section should be simple enough that someone outside your industry could understand it. Investors aren't looking for a detailed product tool, They want to see that your solution logically addresses the problem you just defined. That means focusing on your core use case, not the entire suite of features you plan to build. Early stage solutions win when they are easy to explain and easy to envision. Clarity is your advantage here. Avoid jargon, avoid feature lists, avoid technical deep dives. Instead, focus on the core question: what does your product do and why does it matter? Highlight the transformation, how the customer's life or workflow improves because your product exists. This is where you can connect your founder insight to a tangible solution. When the solution flows naturally from the problem, investors feel the coherence of your story. A strong solution explanation is also short, usually under 30 seconds. You want to leave room for traction, go to market, and business model, which ultimately matter more to investors at this stage. Keep the solution story tight, visual, and grounded in behavior change. If the investor can repeat your solution back to someone else in one sentence, you've nailed it. Let's look at traction. What counts and what doesn't? Traction is not just revenue, traction is evidence. It's any signal that customers care enough about the problem to talk to you, try your product, test your prototype, or come back again. Too many founders apologize for being early when in reality they have plenty of traction. They just aren't telling the story fully. Investors don't expect you to fully monetize at pre seed, but they expect you to show momentum. The strongest traction stories focus on customer behavior, not assumptions. That means number of interviews, sign-ups, wait lists, pilot users, repeated usage, activation patterns, retention indicators, and willingness to pay experiments. Even small signals can be powerful if framed strategically. Investors want to know whether you're learning quickly and whether your early users are validating your core hypothesis. A good traction narrative also has directionality. Are you moving forward, building evidence, reducing risk, and tightening your understanding of the market? Momentum, even modest momentum, carries weight. A founder who shows rising clarity earns more trust than a founder who shows big projections with no proof. Let's now move into business model clarity, how to keep it simple. Your business model doesn't need to be elaborate. Investors know your model will evolve, but they still want to hear a simple explanation of how you plan to make money. Think of it as a one sentence description of how value flows in and out of your business. When founders overcomplicate this, it sends the wrong message that they don't yet understand their market dynamics. A simple business model also reduces investor friction. They are scanning for whether your model aligns with customer behavior, whether it is believable at your stage, and whether it matches your traction story. That means no five-layer pricing structures, no futuristic revenue streams unrelated to your current customers, and no spreadsheets with unrealistic ramps. Early stage investors want grounded, defensible logic. The key is to show the relationship between customer value and revenue. If customers find enough value, they will pay. If your business model clearly reflects that value exchange, investors feel more confident. They don't need perfection, they need coherence. Next is go to market strategy. How to explain that you'll win early. Your go to market strategy, also shortly referred to as GTM, is where investors decide whether your idea can become a business. They're not looking for a fully scaled plan, they are looking for whether you know who your first customer is and how you will reach them, and how you will convert early interest into motion. Most founders make this section too big. What matters is the first wedge. the narrow starting point where your early traction lives. Investors want to see a simple plan they can believe in, not a vague list of channels. Think of GTM as storytelling through customer behavior. You're showing investors that customers already care enough to try your product and that you know how to reach more people like them. Your GTM should connect directly to your traction story. What have you learned? Which channels worked? Which didn't? And how you're doubling down on the ones producing real signals. When you frame GTM this way, it becomes a narrative of learning and refinement, not a generic marketing strategy. The biggest red flag for investors is when founders say, we will acquire customers through social media, SEO, partnerships, and referrals. That tells them you haven't validated anything. Instead, focus on the one or two channels you're already testing or confident about. Show the logic behind those choices. Show how you'll repeat early wins. Show the investor that your early stage distribution plan is grounded in proof, not theory. Next is market size. How to right size your opportunity. Market size is not about showing the biggest number, it's about showing you understand the economic landscape you're operating in. Investors want to know there's enough potential for the business to grow, but they don't need inflated TAM figures to believe in you. In fact, overly large or unrealistic numbers can hurt credibility. What matters is that your initial market is specific, reachable, and aligned with your early traction. The best market size conversations are rooted in bottom up logic. Start with your real or target customer segment, estimate willingness to pay, and multiply that by the number of reachable customers. Show investors you've thought about the practical path to adoption. They want to see realism, that you know where demand exists today and where it can expand tomorrow. High level TAM slides impress no one. Grounded market reasoning does. Market size also ties directly to your GTM and revenue model. If your target segment is too broad, investors assume you're unfocused. If it's too narrow, they worry about constraints. Your job is to articulate a credible entry point and a believable expansion path. This tells investors you understand your industry and increases their confidence in your ability to make strategic decisions. Now let's look at the competitive landscape. How can you show you understand the terrain? Competition is not a threat in your pitch, it's proof you are in a real market. Investors expect to see competition. What they look for is your understanding of how customers currently solve the problem and how your approach differs. Saying we have no competitors is an immediate red flag. It signals a lack of customer awareness. The job here is to show the landscape with humility and strategic thinking, not defensiveness. A strong competition narrative includes both direct and indirect competitors. Direct competitors solve the same problem with similar tools. Indirect competitors solve the same problem with different tools. Spreadsheets, consultants, legacy systems, workarounds. Your differentiation should be crisp and grounded in customer insight. What makes your approach easier, faster, cheaper, or more aligned with real behavior? Keep it simple, one line that captures your edge. Investors aren't looking for theatrics or a crowded diagram. They want to see that you understand the terrain and have a thoughtful approach to positioning. If you can articulate the dynamics of your space, why now, what shifting, where incumbents are weak, you build immediate credibility. You're showing them you don't just have a product, you have strategic awareness. Next, the team slide. Why you are the right people. Investors bet on founders more than they bet on products. The team slide is your opportunity to show why you are the right people to solve this problem. This isn't a resume showcase, it is about founder market fit. Investors want to know whether your background gives you insight, credibility, or a natural advantage. They want to see complementary skills, someone who understands the customer and someone who can build. What matters most here is coherence. Your story should connect your past experience with why you're building this company now. If you lack domain expertise, show your learning velocity. If you have gaps, acknowledge them and highlight advisors who help fill them. Investors don't expect perfection, they expect intentionality. They want to see a team that can adapt, communicate, and execute. The team slide is often where investors make their fastest judgment. They are scanning for leadership maturity, clarity, and problem ownership. They are asking, do these founders understand the space deeply? Do they have the grit to see this through? Or do they have the trust of early customers? And if you're strong in this story, everything else becomes easier. Now, the final ask. Make it strategic, not random. Your ask tells investors how you think. It's not just about the money, it's about the milestones you plan to hit with it. A strong ask shows discipline. It shows you've thought about what needs to happen next in the business and how resources will accelerate these steps. Investors want to see that you're raising with purpose, not raising because it's time to fundraise. Tie your ask directly to traction and next milestones. For example, we are raising 500K to convert three pilots into paid contracts, complete integrations with two partners, and validate our pricing model. This shows clarity, execution mindset, and focus. Avoid vague phrases like scale the business or hire key roles. Investors want specificity, not abstraction. The best ask also shows confidence without compromising or overpromising. Share what progress looks like at 6, 12, or 18 months. Show that you know how to allocate capital responsibility. When founders articulate a clear milestone driven ask, investors immediately feel more comfortable because they see leadership, not just ambition. Let's now look at designing a simple, high impact pitch deck. When you build your pitch deck, remember that its purpose is not to sell, it's to support clarity. A deck should be simple enough that an investor who scans it for 30 seconds can understand your entire story. That means clean slides, minimal text, and a visual flow that mirrors your narrative. Investors are not reading every word, they are scanning for signal. When your deck is cluttered, it adds noise. When it's clean, they absorb the core logic of your business effortlessly. The strongest decks use visual hierarchy, bold headers that summarize the point, small supporting text that adds context, and visuals that ground the narrative without overwhelming it. Think of your deck as scaffolding. It should hold up your story, not become the story. The slides that matter most at early stage are problem, solution, traction, go to market, the team, and the ask. Everything else is optional. And the more optional slides you cut out, the more confident your pitch feels. Design also communicates something subtle to investors, your judgment. A deck that tries to say too much signals a founder who hasn't clarified their message. A deck that is crisp and intentional signals a founder who knows what matters. It's not about being pretty, it's about being clear, credible, and easy to follow. Your deck is a strategic asset. Make it work for you, not against you. Let's now look at delivering your pitch with confidence. even if you're nervous. Confidence in pitching doesn't come from charisma, it comes from structure. When you know the architecture of your pitch, the narrative spine, you don't need to memorize lines. You can speak naturally, conversationally, and with your own personality. Investors don't need founders to be performers. They need founders who can communicate clearly under pressure, especially in unpredictable moments like Q&A. Delivery becomes easier when you manage your pacing. Slow down, breathe, and give the investor time to absorb information. Most founders rush because they are nervous, which makes them sound less confident than they really are. Pauses are powerful, they signal clarity and control. They also allow your audience to follow along without feeling overwhelmed. When you pace the story intentionally, you bring the investor into your world instead of overwhelming them with information. Authenticity is your strongest asset. Speak like a human, not a TED Talk speaker. If you use conversational phrasing, you'll sound more grounded. Investors trust founders who feel real, not rehearsed. And when you embrace mistakes instead of reacting to them, you come across as a resilient, which is exactly what early stage investors look for. A founder in an accelerator kept stumbling because she memorized her entire pitch word for word. When we asked her to change the script and just explain the business like she was talking to a customer, her delivery transformed. In her next investor meeting, the investor said, "You sound like you actually believe this now." Next, how do we handle investor Q&A with composure? Q&A is where investors get their real insight into how you think. The pitch shows your polish, Q&A shows your judgment. Investors aren't trying to trip you up, they're trying to understand how you make decisions, how you reason through ambiguity, and how you respond to uncertainty. When you treat questions as collaboration instead of confrontation, everything feels lighter. You are not defending yourself, you are exploring the business together. The key to Q&A is slowing down your response. When a question comes in, pause, acknowledge it, and answer only the part you understand clearly. Never panic fill the silence. Investors interpret rushed answers as uncertainty or weakness. If you don't know an answer, that's fine. Say, "We haven't validated that yet, but here's what we are testing next." That level of honesty, paired with clarity on next steps, builds trust. Redirection is a skill every founder should have. If a question goes too deep into technical weeds or speculative scenarios, bring it back to the core narrative: problem, insight, traction, and next milestones. Investors respect founders who can stabilize the discussion without sounding defensive. You don't need perfect answers, you need grounded, thoughtful ones. Now, what are the common pitch mistakes and how to avoid them? Most pitch mistakes come from trying too hard. Founders often want to say everything, every feature, every insight, every possible angle. But pitching is an exercise in prioritization. When you overshare, you dilute the story. When you undershare, you lose credibility. The most common mistake is jumping straight into the solution without grounding the investor in the problem. If you don't feel the pain, they won't value the solution. Another common mistake is misrepresenting traction or overloading your pitch with vanity metrics. Investors can sense when something is inflated. It erodes trust quickly. Focus on customer behavior, not projections. Similarly, Avoid dismissing competition. That signals inexperience. And don't pile on technical details unless the investor explicitly asks. When founders over explain, it often comes from insecurity, not strategy. The final mistake is having an unclear ask or trying to sound big instead of being precise. Investors respect founders who communicate with grounded realism. You are not here to impress, you are here to show leadership. A disciplined pitch signals a disciplined founder. The moment you simplify and focus, your pitch becomes more powerful. Lastly, data storytelling, turning numbers into narrative. Data alone doesn't convince investors, interpretation does. You're not just showing numbers, you're telling a story about what those numbers mean. When you highlight a metric, explain why it matters, what behavior it represents, how it validates your strategy, or what decisions it informed. Investors want to see how you think through data, not just that you can generate it. Your traction metrics should be simple and tied to customer actions. Activation, retention, repeat usage, willingness to pay, or operational improvements. It's far more powerful to show a single proof point with a clear trend than a long list of disconnected numbers. Investors remember directional movement, not spreadsheets. Show how early signals fit into your broader narrative of learning and momentum. When founders translate data into strategic insights, it signals maturity. Investors see you as someone who operates with discipline and clarity. Don't overwhelm your pitch with charts. Keep it sharp, clean, and focused on the signals that matter. Your goal is to show that you're not guessing, you're building based on evidence. A mobility tech founder originally presented a wall of metrics, none landed. He reframed the traction slide to highlight a single insight. 40% of riders returned within 7 days without reminders. That one metric told the entire story of product stickiness. Investors immediately understood the potential. By this point, you should see your pitch not as a performance, but as a leadership tool. The story you tell investors is the story you tell customers, employees, and partners. It should feel natural, clear, and aligned with how your business actually operates. The immediate next step is to finalize your 30-second, 2-minute, and 5-minute versions. Those versions will serve you across warm intros, formal meetings, demo days, and advisory conversations. Your second next step is to define and refine your traction story. Even if you're early, you have more traction than you realize. Customer behaviors, interviews, prototypes tested, early signals, write all of them down. Translate them into a momentum narrative. Investors want to see progress, not perfection. The more evidence you can thread into your story, the more credible you become. Finally, put time on your calendar every week to practice your pitch out loud. There is no substitute for repetition. Practice in low stakes environments, get feedback from peers, record yourself. Each iteration builds clarity and confidence. Remember, investors are not looking for performance, they are looking for leaders who can communicate direction, conviction, and disciplined decision making. Thank you all for joining today's Startup Growth Playbook session on pitch mastery for founders who hate pitching. If you'd like to keep building on what we covered today, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions designed to help small businesses and startups to move from ideas to action. We can focus on product and customer readiness, operations and expansion readiness, or fundraising and investor readiness, or create a blended plan that fits where you are right now. Each session is practical, focused, and tailored to your next step. You can schedule a free 20-minute consultation call with me over Zoom so we can map out what kind of support would make the biggest difference for your business. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Bhuva Shakti. You can also get unlimited access to all the sessions and full recordings by going to my membership website. The link is on the screen. You can sign up for your first month free and rewatch at getwalletmax.com/membership. Thanks again for joining.